Hi, everyone. My name's Ruth Sternberg, and I am a coach who works with job seekers in transition. And this is the first in a series chatting with allied professionals and job seekers about some of the problems and solutions of finding a job. Today, we are here with Dalena Bradley. Hi, Dalena.
Hi, Ruth.
Dalena is an interview coach located in Portland, Oregon. Her company is Dalena Bradley Career Marketing Services. And what's your title, Dalena?
Job interview coach is good. Job interview and career marketing coach. I go by both.
So Dalena and I thought we would have a quick chat for you today, a little bit about some of the challenges of interviewing, especially now that so many of us are at home and interviewing is being done virtually. I know many of us can feel uncomfortable trying to get in front of the camera on our computer and talk to an employer. And we could probably use a little bit of help trying to navigate that environment. So I wanted to just ask, Dalena, what kinds of things are you hearing these days about interviewing and some of the challenges?
Right. So in the context of video interviews, I work with a lot of clients. In fact, I've always been 100% virtual, and that's always been the mode of communications I've used with my clients to do mock interviews. And so I have amassed a lot of knowledge about the do's and don'ts as I've been working with people. And so I would say what I find probably the number one thing is that people, sometimes they just forget to sort of set the stage for a successful conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean having distractions to a minimum. So the phone, if you have your phone nearby, making sure that it's on Do Not Disturb so you don't hear those alerts or chimes come through.
I should check mine.
I know, I did right before we got on.
Right.
I've got to make sure, and I did have it on right before we got on today, and so I put it on Do Not Disturb. And the other thing that can be really distracting is email alerts that come in. So either make sure that your email is shut down, or sometimes people join through a link through their email, so it'll be up. So just make sure that you have the alerts turned off, because it is really, really distracting. That's all part of setting the stage from an audio perspective.
Mm-hmm. So that's when you're talking and you hear that ping.
Yep.
Ping. Yeah. It's a good tip when you're on a conference call too, to try to, turn that down a little bit,
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, and then there's the whole visual aspect. So you want to make sure that your background is decluttered, that there's nothing really distracting in terms of artwork. I mean, I'm all for sort of a natural background, and it doesn't have to be so vanilla and just plain in the back that it looks like a mugshot. That's however, err toward that side if a blank wall is what you have and is that's better than having bookshelves behind you that have papers and notebooks and stuff spilling out and
like
way
mine?
too much. No, because yours is all
Okay.
very neatly displayed. So, just check that background and make sure that it's not distracting, because in the interview, you want the attention to be on you, not on the background and, oh, what are they reading? Or, oh, what are they listening to? That kind of thing.
What about, I don't know, how you should appear when you come to the camera? What are some tips? I mean, what should you wear? Where do you look? There's a tendency, I think, to look like I'm looking right now at you, right? But but I'm not looking at you. But if I look in the camera, it looks like I'm looking at you.
Exactly.
But you can't read, but you can't read cues that way though, you know? I don't
That's
know.
exactly, yeah, that is a tough one, especially for people who are not used to being on video very much with their laptop. Learning to train yourself to look at that camera lens or your webcam lens, whichever, you know, the case may be, is number one. And it's not natural to do, because I'm not looking at you right now. I'm not looking at you at all. I am looking at the camera lens. Yet I'd like to see your facial expression and once in a while and that sort of thing. So I'll look at you on occasion, but mostly I'm training my eye to look right at that lens, and that's what people who are job interviewing should try and do as well. And one tip to kind of get you to do this so that it becomes second nature is you can put a little post-it note, frankly, on the side, each side that says, you know, look here, so that you don't forget. And always practice, right? You can always just practice a couple of times through, so you kind of get into the groove of training your eye that way.
That's a really good idea to practice. You know, you could probably get on with a friend, you know, and say, let's just get on a free Zoom account and or on Google Hangouts or something, and you can talk to me and I'll talk to you. Give me some feedback, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And I think that people are kind of getting a tidal wave of practice opportunities these days. You know, if they're working remotely at home, they've just had to jump in and kind of practice that way. But you can refine your game by getting on, you know, in a safe space with a family member or a friend. That all said, Ruth, I think that, you know, people are really forgiving these days because,
oh, I'm sure,
you know, we've got family members and pets and things like that in the background, and more distractions than we've had to necessarily deal with before. You can control some of that by communicating with the people that you live with ahead of time and do your best. Now, a 2-year-old, that's going to be a lot harder than with a 17-year-old, but you know, that communication ahead of time, putting a sign on the door if you're lucky enough to have a room that's not a common area, you know, quiet on the set, that's helpful. One of the things I wanted to remember to tell you is, you were talking about appearance getting on. I know we're not necessarily going into a whole wardrobe while you interview thing unless you want to talk about that, but one of the things that I see when people get on video is they're way too close. And so I think it's good to play with the position of your, like that. Play with the position of your laptop.
they're like this, or, you know.
or their heads getting cut off. I think it's a really good, particularly in an interview situation, Ruth, where you can show more of your body so that it's more real life. You know, when people see you using your hands and gesturing and things like that to enhance what it is you're saying, it's more like being in person. So if you're situated backward, they can see that, they can see your body language and get a better sense of you that way. And that's also a really good way of showing more energy on camera, because that's a big one that I notice too, is people get on and maybe they've had some trouble getting on the call and they're a little bit flustered and they might be a little nervous, or maybe they're just fine, but they're subdued, somehow a little bit more subdued in their persona when they're on video. And so what I would like to suggest to job seekers is to take your energy level up a notch. And one way to do that is by, you know, using your hands when you talk a little bit, not to distraction, but using your hands to emphasize points, letting them see more of you. You can project more energy that way.
Now, you and I were talking recently about the energy thing. You were saying that very often in interviews, people will not project a lot of energy, maybe out of fear that that they seem over eager, or that they'll look awkward, or maybe they're just nervous. What's your advice about that?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think that people maybe do try to overcompensate for their anxiety or nervousness by being a little bit too serious about it and too subdued. And so the using inflection in your voice, if you're excited about the opportunity, then sound excited about the opportunity using voice inflection, but also remembering to say it, saying that you're excited to be there. And so that's one. And then the gesturing, as I mentioned, and the position of your body, as I mentioned, just letting them see more of you. And just up leveling your energy about a notch. And the same goes for phone conversations. I know we're talking about video now, but also phone conversations. Any distance form of communication, you need to up level your energy, because it does get lost in translation a little bit than if you were in person.
When I talk to people about doing phone screens, I always say, get up and walk around. No one can see you. You're on the phone, right? So walk around and smile the whole time. I read advice to put a mirror there so that you're seeing yourself smile. Yeah. It affects your tone of voice when you're smiling.
People can hear you smile. It's true. They can hear you smile. And I agree with standing up when you're on the phone, when you're talking. I just tell people, don't multitask. Don't decide to empty the dishwasher or, go out and get the mail or something like that, because I've certainly experienced that with people that I've worked with before who, they're multitaskers and they're keeping the conversation going. Somehow they're staying focused, so they're really good at it. But there's a limit to what you should be doing when you're on the phone.
Well, yeah, and the thing that really helps, when you're on a phone too, is taking notes, because no one can see you. And I always say take a lot of notes, because it's going to help you in later conversations. But what about taking notes when you're in front of someone? It's a little different, because I always say, bring a notebook, and say, is it okay if I write a few things down? And usually they'll say, sure, why not? Because that's what they're doing. But what about when you're on camera? It's kind of weird. You've got your notes over here and you're not looking. What should you do?
Right. I think it's the same. I think the same rule applies if you're in, if you're in an in-person interview, or if you're on video, you might, because they can't see your notebook or your portfolio that might be down in front of you or on your lap or something, then you can just say, I've got my notebook in front of me, and, I want to make sure I don't miss anything important. So I may write down a few notes, just sort of as in your introductory part of your interview. I think that's a good way to handle it. The one thing I would caution, however, is having any other screen turned on. So if you have an iPad, or if you have your phone and that's a way you take notes or something like that, and if you wear glasses, that is a huge telltale sign. You can see the reflection of other screens in people's glasses.
Oh,
so just make sure you don't have any other screens going on, because that's a distraction and people can pick that out very quickly. And
typing is a problem too on video. Sometimes it sounds like thunder when you're if you're on a keyboard. So try, it's, if you can, write it down. Right? I mean, I think that's a lot better, a lot quieter.
Yeah, and also, just to kind of add on to that point that you made, is having some notes of things that you don't want to forget to say, a few key talking points. There are so many candidates I've talked with who, they get out of the interview and say, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell them this really relevant, important thing. And there's an opportunity to do that, as you know, in your follow-up thank you note. Sometimes you can add something that you forgot to say, that's a good opportunity to do that. But, you know, have those notes at the ready in the video interview, like you said with the phone interview, same applies, and just so that you don't forget.
And what should we do right after it's over? I mean, it's like, I guess the etiquette is, you know, they'll tell you, thank you very much, you know, ask them for next steps perhaps, and then they turn off the interview. What should you do now? Should you immediately shoot out an email to them and thank them, or what should happen now?
Yeah. So definitely, I love that you mentioned never leave the interview, whether you're in person or on video, without finding out the time frame, the mode of communication that the hiring team prefers to hear from you. Do they, you know, is email or phone preferred for them? And then that gives you, you know, a launch point for, okay, this is how I should gauge the timing of my follow-up, right? But the other thing that I want to mention, Ruth, is remembering to ask for the job. You know, so you've asked your very thoughtful questions. What's your time frame for making the decision shouldn't be included in those thoughtful questions that you ask at the interview that, you know, can be related to their business goals or the first several days on the job or the work environment or the management style. Those kinds of things are all good things to ask at the end. But asking for the job, remembering to ask for the job in a way that is really positive and powerful. And it's, you know, I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I look forward to moving forward in the process. I'd really love to be your next VP of marketing. And then you're kind of already planting that seed, associating you with the position title because you've verbalized it. And then when you get off the call, absolutely, just as if you were in person, you fire off those thank you notes. There are, you know, I've been working with clients recently who are doing group video interview calls with, you know, a few different people. So make sure, I tell job seekers, you know, make sure that you contact the recruiting coordinator or the hiring manager, making so that you can get contact information for every single person that was on that call and write, you know, an individual thank you note to each within 24 hours. And so that's what you do at the end of the video call. As you said, fire off those thank you notes, set up your follow-up strategy, and you know, get ready for the offer, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, you know, really the process is the same as in person. There are, just as we said, a few things that you should just keep in mind to help it go smoothly. And the thing is, you know, I always say, we're all people, okay? And a lot of people that are doing the interviewing are also probably relatively uncomfortable with the technology. And so I'm sure that there'll be technical glitches and things that happen, and just kind of just go with the flow. I really think how you handle that kind of stuff says a lot about the kind of employee you would be too. You know, how do you handle a technical problem? You know,
that's right, and that's why it's also good to have a plan B in place before the conversation really gets started. Is asking, oh my gosh, if we're disconnected, or if the bandwidth, you know, oh my gosh, there are a lot of people who are sharing Wi-Fi, right? I mean, the usage is up so much right now. So if you time out or there's a disruption in internet connection, you know, should I call you? Should I text you? What should be our plan B, so that everybody's on the same page and it doesn't have to be a panic, awful situation.
yeah,
Which is already stressful, right?
Yeah.
It's already, you're in an interview situation, it's already stressful without that added layer.
Good advice. So those of you who are watching this, I suggest perhaps review this video, write down a few things ahead of time, make a little list for yourself of things that you need to do to get ready for your phone interview or your virtual interview, so you don't forget. And I will also, with this post, I'm going to summarize a little bit of what was said here, and then Dalena I'm going to put this up, and you can comment as well. And I'm also going to put contact information for Dalena, because she is a coach who works with people to get them ready for interviews. And you may just decide, you know, I need a pro to practice with, and she's the one. So
Well, thank you so much, Ruth, for having me today.
you're welcome. And look for another one of these next week, folks, with another professional or a job seeker with a few tips and advice to help you during these difficult times. Have a great day and stay safe. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.